everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. A Latter-day First Church has 4 nonagenarian apostles, including entire First Presidency. A nonagenarian is someone that's in their 90s, and this is now because of President Henry B. Eyring, who turned 90. So we're going to look at that and how this hasn't happened before. This is similar to the article that we recently covered called Current First Presidency, Quorum of 12 Apostles are the 6th longest tenured in church history. You remember that video where we looked at each first presidency from now, going all the way back to Joseph Smith, and which one has remained the longest? So on that same spreadsheet that I made for that, I included this information of ages of the first presidency, when there were changes from one first presidency to another. Okay, so we're going to look at that in just a minute. Here's an update on the Book of Mormon sharing challenge. 5,935 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been shared so far. We're getting ever closer to 6,000, so make sure to keep it up. And no change since yesterday in the number of people sharing the Book of Mormon, so we are still at 580. So if you haven't shared one yet, please consider doing so. It helps to encourage other people to do the same. So this article was sent to me by Greg Brown. Okay. Thank you, Greg. And before we get into it, I just want to show you this spreadsheet that took me forever to put together. It was very monotonous, and thank goodness we have things like formulas where you can enter in dates and figure out people's ages. So that's what I did, but there's still a lot of manual work that I had to do, but I did it. Okay, so we're going to be focusing on these 3 columns, column F, I, and K. In fact, I think I can just go ahead and zoom in a little bit. So these columns here that are purple and pink, they're going to change colors as we go down. On the very far left, this is where we were looking at the length of time that a first presidency had remained the same until it changed whenever someone passed away, and and then it got changed. So that's what that had to do with. And I have it ranked according to the how long each one lasted. So again, make sure to check out that video if you missed it. It's interesting. Okay, so Joseph Smith. Okay, when the church was officially like when it first had its first presidency, the first presidency of the church, he was 26 years old. Which is kind of mind-blowing, frankly. We always talk about the fact that he had his first vision when he was 14, but when there was the officially the first presidency of the church, 26 years old, which is crazy. Okay, so he was 26, and then you have Jesse Goss, or Gossi, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, 47 years old, and then Sidney Rigdon at 39 years old. So a very young, very, very young first presidency. In fact, the exact opposite of what we have right now in terms of age. So we're going to get to that. So let's go through time. This is a timeline. Go down, down, down. Joseph Smith passes away. And then we transition from him to Brigham Young. Brigham Young started at the age of 52. Heber C. Kimball was also 52. And William Richards, 49 years old. Okay. I have these color-coded by decade of life. You see, so the 30s is this pink color, 40s is the purple color, 50s is this cyan color. Okay. And then we move on. Brigham Young gets older. He dies in his 70s, which I have color-coded as yellow. And then John Taylor, Wilford Woodruff. Wilford Woodruff was the first president of the church that made it to his 90s at 91 years old. So up until that point, there had not been like an older group of members of the first presidency. You had Wilford Woodruff at 91, George Q. Cannon at 71, and Joseph F. Smith at 59 years old. Okay, moving on. Lorenzo Snow in his 80s, Joseph F. Smith getting up into his to 80 years old. Okay, and then on and on and on. And you can see that if we're looking just at reds, because red is the color that would describe what we currently have as far as somebody being in their 90s, you don't see a whole lot of reds so far, right? Brigham Young, John Taylor, Wilford Woodruff, Lorenzo Snow, John F. Smith, Heber J. Grant, No reds. Here's one here with Charles W. Penrose in the First Presidency with Heber J. Grant, Heber J. Grant being the president of the church, but then that goes away. Okay, and then it's just orange and yellow, and oh, and now we have our next person in their 90s, J. Reuben Clark, and then David O. McKay uh, gets up into his 90s, all the way to 96. Joseph Filling Smith, 95. Okay, but still, so comparing more recent times to the very early church, uh, the first presidency gets older. All of them get older compared to how things were before, and it's kind of like a gradual thing. If you'll notice, if you just pay attention to the colors, they become lighter as you go back in time, right? And then, or well, not lighter, but that end of the spectrum of the rainbow, because I did it according to the paint bucket up here, the order that they had the colors in. Okay, so moving on. So they get older and older and older, right? For the most part. And now, for the first time in church history, you have reds across the board. President Nelson, President Oaks, President Eyring, and I decided to include President M. Russell Ballard because he's the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. Excuse me. And so, in fact, I think he's acting president. I can't remember, but you get what I'm saying. So this is the first and only time that you have all three that are in the first presidency that are all in their 90s. It's never happened before. In fact, it hasn't really even come close. There's never been a time when you've had two members of the first presidency that were both in their 90s. That hadn't even happened before. Okay, so going back down. So something different is going on here. And I want to read a few things that Jeffrey R. Holland has to say about this. One concept I want to bring to your mind is, okay, now if we shift to the length of time that a first presidency has stayed together, this current first presidency is in 15th place, right? President Thomas S. Monson's was in third place when it was Thomas S. Monson, President Eyring, and President Uchtdorf. Okay, they made it to number 3. Gordon B. Hinckley's time, when it was Gordon B. Hinckley, Thomas S. Monson, and James E. Faust, they are in the number 1 spot with 12 years and 5 months exactly. And then we went back to the number 2 spot. There it is. Which was Heber J. Grant, J. Reuben Clark, and David O. McKay. And we noted that from 1934 to 1945, those were the years of World War II. And I'm not going to say for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if the reason why they stayed together like that, the Lord made it so that there was no change in the first presidency during that time, is because of how turbulent it was. And it was World War II, the worst war the world had ever seen. So maybe the Lord wanted to have stability and give a sense of peace and calm as much as possible during that time, right? And so thinking of it that way, and if we think of, even though they're in 15th place, if you switch from that mode of thinking of how long they've stayed together as a first presidency, and you focus now more just on their age, well, I think it's a similar concept, and it seems like Jeffrey R. Holland thinks so as well. So let's go ahead and let's hop over to The Blessings of Age, Elder Holland's essay on the first presidency. On May 31st, a modest birthday party in the church administration building made history in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. In that setting, President Henry B. Eyring, second counselor in the first presidency of the church, observed his 90th birthday. At the same time, the church observed first presidency already, at this point, already the most elderly in its history, continue to serve with each of its three members 90 years of age or older, with President Russell M. Nelson at 98, President Oaks at 90, and now President Eyring joining them in his 90s, turning 90 years old. Okay. Later it says, nevertheless, when the significance of the first presidency's responsibilities is considered and the demand on their health is fulfilling... Okay. and the demand on their health in fulfilling them is weighed. Occasionally, a questioning comment can be heard here or there about the vitality needed for such service, such as, wouldn't it be better to have younger men carry that load? We can hear in the conversation of some, wouldn't younger men be more responsive to these times? A few others would say. And let me just point out right here, it's just the incessant. I know that we want to have answers to questions, and sometimes we think that we know how to do things better, but just this incessant questioning the Lord. Questioning the Lord and how He does things. Ultimately, it's the Lord that chooses them. You can already see kind of like a disconnect where it's like some people tend to think that, um, again, everything that happens in the church all comes down to just the apostles and prophets, and they're just men. And so they're the ones that are carrying out their own agenda or what they think is best. It's not, it's a partnership. They are asked to think and pray and fast and consider things. But when it comes down to it, they come to a decision together, and then the Lord confirms it. And in some cases, just like in your own life, the Lord will be like, "Nope, that's not the way I want to go. I want you to do this." So don't question the Lord. Don't question the Lord. It may make more sense to you, your way of thinking, but it's the Lord that is guiding the church through the prophets and the apostles. Okay, later. On April 7th, 1996, a broad television audience in the United States had the chance to consider just such questions when iconic television journalist Mike Wallace bluntly put this issue to then President Gordon B. Hinckley. On a segment of the popular investigative television program 60 Minutes, Mr. Wallace said, there are those who say this is a gerontocracy. This is a church run by old men, end quote. President Hinckley, then 86 years old, replied with the rapid response of a spunky 30-year-old, quote, "Isn't it wonderful to have a man of maturity at the head, a man of judgment who isn't blown about by every wind of doctrine?" He said, leaving both interrogator and responder in laughter when the only thing left to say after that was that at least the leader should not be dotty, quote unquote. Okay, so then Jeffrey R. Holland addresses like why would this be desirable? Okay, First point President Hinckley made: age has brought presidents Russell Nelson, Dallin Oaks, and Henry Eyring maturity and judgment, strength to resist being blown about by every wind of doctrine. Like the roots of a tree, their combined years in church leadership, a whopping 106 years as apostles alone, to say nothing of their years of service prior to that, have given them a degree of stability that can withstand even the stiffest of social, political, or economic winds that might blow. And by the way, I might add, there's so many times like in movies or TV shows, like they bring this idea up, like why don't we have more young people that lead? More young people hear their voices and their ideas. Essentially, this is it's secularism, it's communism. Frankly, they want dummies. They want dummies in power, people that are easily influenced, that don't have much wisdom, that are more prone to certain things that they can use to manipulate them, essentially. Right? Isn't it just like, even putting that aside, isn't it kind of like just intuitive that if you're going to be led by someone, you want somebody that has experience? um, Okay, so anyway, continuing. So that was the first point. Secondly, there is a degree of wisdom that comes with age, not acquired quickly or superficially. It is regularly said, usually with a smile, that there is an impulsiveness and determination in young men that prompts them to take immediate action on an issue, even if the action is wrong. Older men need to take action too, but usually wait until they know it to be the best action under the circumstances. Even then, the wise response will be metered, and deliberate. And then there's like a poem right here. I'm going to skip that. Thirdly, Much of the strength, judgment, and wisdom we admire in older people came to them only one way, from experience that was often acquired by facing difficult issues and making painful decisions in their younger years. In that spirit, someone said that the life of an elderly person represented in quote unquote experiential library. And losing one of those older men or women was like standing helplessly by as the library burned to the ground. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, in matters of the spirit and in those considerations that take us into the patterns of the past, we see that God has deliberately developed a hierarchy, a system of seniority, if you will, that allows for a call to come to a man at a relatively young age. However, that man will be a great deal older by the time he has moved through the apostolic chairs that eventually makes him the senior apostle. And that's it. And then you can read the rest of it later if you'd like. I'll put the link in the description below. So it just kind of makes sense. And I hope you cringe like I do when you see this kind of attitude, like we need more young people, in government and making decisions. No, we don't. That is the exact opposite way that you would want to go. The exact opposite. And, I'm not going to do like a blanket statement. There could be some times, I mean, in the case, of Joseph Smith himself, he was very young, but it was because the Lord had prepared him. It was the Lord's decision to choose him as prophet and guide him and mold him and all that stuff. So there may be times when it's appropriate, but generally speaking, young people are stupid, including myself. including myself. I wish I had more years and wisdom and all that stuff, But yeah, okay. So, and then lastly, I think there was a couple more things I wanted to just share really quick. Okay, so this is from the article called "A Latter-day First Church Has 4 Nonagenarian Apostles, Including Entire First Presidency." Okay, it is only the 7th time in the church's 193-year history that 2 or more of the senior leaders, presidents of the church, counselors in the First Presidency, or members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles have been 90 years old or older at the same time. So, out of all 15, this is only the 7th time that it's happened. And that's an interesting number, 7. Okay, later it says the first time the church had 3 apostles in their 90s came in 2014. Elder L. Tom Perry had turned 90 in August 2012 and was 92 when President Nelson, then a member of the Quorum of the 12, turned 90 on September 9th, 2014. And President Boyd K. Packer, acting president of the 12, turned 90 the following day. Elder Perry died 8 months later, and President Packer passed away a little more than a month after that. So it was short-lived. But again, that is only 3. Right now we have 4. That's only 3, and they weren't in the First Presidency. Now we have 4, which includes all members of the First Presidency and the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. And then lastly, it says the group of apostles in their 90s will remain rather exclusive for some time, as the next oldest members of the 12, Elder Jeffrey R. Holland, Elder Dieter F. Uchtdorf, and Elder Quentin L. Cook, are each 82 years old. Yeah, so we're in a special time, something that may never really happen again between now and the second coming. I tend to think that this is absolutely intentional on the part of the Lord, and it has everything to do with the time that we live in. And maybe it'll be good, not just President Nelson, but to see all of them go from translated to resurrected in the twinkling of an eye. That would really be quite the experience, to see all 4 of them have that happen. All right, well, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.